Heinrich Himmler, Joseph Goebbels, Hermann Göring, Josef Mengele, Rudolf Höss, and Adolf Eichmann. A list of these names can only cause stinging in anyone who hears it. But what happened to those who had to bear these surnames? It's terrible to think that the words that identify oneself and one's lineage are linked to the perpetrators of the most heartbreaking atrocities of the entire Second World War. But these men, who were responsible for systematically exterminating millions of people, also had families. And in most cases, the parents' dreams became the nightmares of their children. Today, in this new installment of military history, we will learn about the fate of the descendants of the cruelest genocidaires who ever existed.
Between 1932 and 1940, Magda and Josef Goebbels had 6 children, each with names starting with H in honor of Hitler, who was often photographed playing with them. Goebbels' family also belonged to Hitler's inner circle at Berghof, which was Adolf Hitler's vacation residence in the Bavarian Alps from 1935 until 1945. Even though the Goebbels family was presented as the ideal family of the Third Reich to the public, the reality was very different.
Joseph Goebbels' family was the model that symbolized what German society should understand as the ideal family. Goebbels was not only the person closest to the Führer, but also held the position of Minister of Propaganda and Information, a key position in the ideological construction of the regime. Therefore, the first and most important creation of this great deceiver was his nuclear family. The married couple, Magda and Joseph Goebbels, enjoyed a deep intimacy with their leader, Adolf Hitler, who was their best man. In addition to their work, they shared dinners and vacations together. However, the image of the perfect family was threatened. Goebbels, an inveterate womanizer, had a passionate affair with the Czechoslovak actress Lida Barová. The Führer, seeking to maintain the facade, had to intervene to force the minister to end his adultery and respect his marriage to his wife. Hitler understood very well that the corruption of the image of the Goebbels clan, which embodied the fundamental values of National Socialism, would lead to a loss of credibility among the German people. But let's fast forward to the night of May 1st, 1945. Hitler had already committed suicide, and the Goebbelses firmly believed that a world without him was not worth inhabiting. Not for them, nor for their children. Various members of the Nazis tried to save the children. Wilfried von Oven, Goebbels' secretary, Karl Gebhardt, president of the Red Cross, and even Adolf Hitler himself. Obtaining safe passage for the number 2 in the Third Reich was not a difficult task, but he unhesitatingly opposed them on every occasion. Let's delve into the lamentable end of little Helga, Hildegard, Helmut, Hedwig, Holdine, and Heidrun Goebbels.
Magda ordered the SS dentist, Helmut Kunz, to inject her 6 children, dressed into long white nightgowns, with morphine to make them unconscious. After that, Magda Goebbels, with the help of Ludwig Stumpfegger, Hitler's personal surgeon, crushed an ampule of cyanide into each of their mouths. Once she had killed her own 6 children, Magda and Josef walked up the stairs to the garden of the Chancellery, where they committed suicide.
After hearing such a gruesome story, let's continue with another example of barbarism. This time, we continue with the case of Gudrun Burwitz, who was nicknamed the Nazi Princess. Gudrun Burwitz was the daughter of the most ruthless Nazi leader on record, the terrible Heinrich Himmler. This individual was none other than the leader of the SS Gestapo and head of the German secret police. Like Goebbels, this man also had a friendly relationship with Adolf Hitler. His position in the Nazi hierarchy gave him the power to implement a plan he himself had devised, the final solution. Himmler was the mastermind behind the Holocaust, which sought the total extermination of Europe's Jews. On May 23, 1945, after being arrested by the British, he took his own life by poisoning himself. His goal was to avoid prosecution for his colossal war crimes. But before that, he and his wife, Margarete Boden, conceived Gudrun Burwitz. He also adopted a son with Boden and had 2 more children from an extramarital affair. Regarding his firstborn Gudrun, it is said that Himmler was able to establish a very close bond with her. The girl grew up with a strong sense of admiration for her father and those around him. This is an entry from Gudrun's diary, written after visiting a detention camp with her father at the age of 12.
Today, we went to the SS concentration camp at Dachau. We saw everything we could. We saw the gardening work. We saw the pear trees. We saw all the pictures painted by the prisoners. Marvelous. And afterwards, we had a lot to eat. It was very nice.
It's clear that a young girl's impressions cannot be judged, but the behaviors this girl displayed as a woman can be evaluated. Gudrun maintained unrestricted loyalty to her father's legacy until her dying day. In addition to attending numerous neo-Nazi events and demonstrations throughout her life, she was associated with Stille Hilfe, an organization providing legal and financial aid to former SS members. Macabre figures such as Klaus Barbie, the Butcher of Lyon, and Martin Sommer, a guard at the Dachau and Buchenwald camps, were among those who received assistance from the organization. Burwitz emerged as an unavoidable guide for the new waves of the German far right. Groups such as the Viking Youth, modeled after the Hitler Youth, relied on her patronage. A truly striking aspect of her career is that she worked for the secret services of the Federal Republic of Germany, in collusion with that democratic state. She also served under the orders of the American occupation forces in West Germany until 1968, which allowed her to insert some of her former Nazi comrades into that political network. Even Gudrun's husband, Wolf-Dieter Burwitz, was active in far-right movements and as an official of an openly neo-Nazi political party. Heinrich Himmler's great-niece accurately summarizes the evil that afflicts her family.
Wir hatten ja immer praktischerweise dieses personifizierte Böse in der Familie, Heinrich Himmler, der wirklich alles Böse auf sich vereinigt hat, sodass alle anderen ganz locker in seinem Schatten verschwinden konnten und automatisch eigentlich als kleine Fische erscheinen mussten neben ihm. Das hatte eben lange zur Folge oder hat bis heute in Teilen der Familie zur Folge, dass nicht kritisch hinterfragt wird, was haben die anderen Familienmitglieder eigentlich damit zu tun gehabt. Das war eine ganz starke Entlastungsfunktion, die Heinrich da übernommen hat für den Rest der Familie.
The next figure we'll address is Josef Mengele, who distinguished himself as a doctor and SS officer at the Auschwitz Detention Center. His work as a medical professional contradicted all self-respecting ethical and moral principles. The pseudoscientific experiments, or rather torture, he performed on camp inmates were of immeasurable brutality, deliberately infecting patients with typhus, injecting substances into children's eyes to alter their color, removing eyeballs from living people, mutilating human beings by removing organs, murdering children in front of their mothers, stitching twins together to make them Siamese, among other savagery beyond all rational comprehension. During the end of World War II, the Angel of Death managed to escape. He did so through a succession of false identities, which allowed him to travel to South American countries such as Argentina, Paraguay, and his final destination, Brazil. The criminal's only son, Rolf Mengele, remained in Germany. The young man had been told that his father was one of the many who had disappeared in the military conflict, but at the age of 12, he learned the truth that would forever change his life.
This is Josef Mengele and his son Rolf. What you should know is that at the time this photo was taken, Rolf thought the man at his side was Uncle Fritz. Rolf Mengele saw his father on only 2 different occasions. This one at the age of 12, and then later, shortly before Josef Mengele's death.
In October 1977, Rolf Mengele was reunited with his father after more than 20 years of separation. The son visited his father in hiding in Brazil. Rolf needed answers about his father's role at the Auschwitz concentration camp. From the outset, the Angel of Death was quick to apologize, stating, "I have not the slightest desire to justify or even apologize for any of my decisions, actions, or behavior throughout my life. My patience has its limits." The doctor was incapable of acknowledging any responsibility for the aberrations he had committed. From his point of view, he was merely following the orders of his superiors.
At the end, I decided to see once this man in South America, but was not very easy for me to go there and not to be followed up by hunters. I decided it as a personal challenge to have the opportunity to have the evidence if this all is right, what he is alleged to be done or not. I did nothing. What you can say, I did not tell his hunters where he is.
The meeting between Josef Mengele and his son in Brazil culminated when Rolf agreed to give his father the generous sum of $5,000, money that had been collected from relatives in Germany. After that day, they never saw each other again. Years later, the eldest son was informed that the deceased Nazi's remains would be exhumed, but Rolf refused to return to South America. Since then, the bones of the Angel of Death have been used to teach anatomy classes to future doctors at the university closest to his place of death. It's time to investigate one of the collaborators who belonged to the Führer's immediate circle, Hermann Göring. He had achieved fame as a hero during World War I, having excelled as a flying ace. In peacetime, he devoted himself to commercial flights until he was captivated by the wild oratory of a veteran corporal in the Munich beer halls. This was Adolf Hitler, whom Göring joined early on in the founding core of the National Socialist Party. The aviator participated in the failed coup d'etat in November 1923, although he managed to avoid arrest. From there, he rose to the highest levels of the Nazi hierarchy, serving as president of the Council of Prussia, supreme commander of the Luftwaffe, German vice-chancellor, and founder of the Gestapo. His manly bearing and charismatic attitude combined with the authority he wielded, giving him no qualms about approaching any woman he desired. Thus, he seduced the attractive Baroness Karen von Kanzow, recently separated from a successful Olympic gymnast. The outcome was abrupt. Karen died of sudden cardiac arrest and the couple had no children. Taking her place was a modest theater artist, the beautiful Emmy Sonnemann. Their marriage, celebrated on April 10, 1935, was a national event. The Führer officiated as best man. There were lavish military parades, and in the evening, a grand reception at the Berlin Opera. Following the marriage of Germany's most enviable couple, Edda Goring was born in 1935, and her childhood resembled a fairy tale.
Eine ganz besondere Attraktion war es für mich jedes Mal, wenn ich am Sonntag zusammen mit den Erwachsenen zu Mittag essen durfte. Ich saß dann auf einem durch Kissen erhöhten Sitz neben meinem Vater, schön angezogen, uns gegenüber Mama, und ich kam mir natürlich sehr wichtig vor. Mein Vater liebte es, viele Verwandte und Freunde um sich zu haben, und so kam meistens eine recht große Mittagstafel zusammen, was ich sehr interessant und aufregend fand.
Edda remained in the German town of Obersalzberg during the war. It was far from the danger zone of the front lines. In 1945, at the end of the conflict, Edda was sent to a girls' school. Her mother was the one who told her about her father's sentence and how he had committed suicide. She tried to stay out of the affair for the rest of her youth. She then began studying at the University of Munich and also maintained contact with Winifred Wagner, her patron. Although she sued the state, the artistic heritage her father had looted to give her was never returned. She never married, but she did maintain a long relationship with a journalist. In the interviews she gave, she always remembered Hermann Göring fondly, despite his involvement in the genocide of millions of people. Furthermore, it's important to mention the story of Rudolf Höss, the commandant of the Auschwitz concentration camp. The Führer had delegated to him the task of organizing, operating, and directing this space of death. For this purpose, a mansion was provided for him, located on the other side of the barbed wire fence of the extermination camp. There, Höss lived with his wife and 5 children, who grew up close to one of the worst massacres of the 20th century. The children were raised in every luxury, with domestic help provided by prisoners from the detention center. The one who felt a special devotion to her father figure was his eldest daughter, Brigitte Hoss.
I loved it. It was like paradise for me. And I didn't know what was on the other side of the villa.
And there were prisoners who worked in the house and in the garden, is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I just thought they come and help, you know, people have different clothes on. We didn't know they were prisoners. And they were always happy and wanted to play with us.
When the Russians advanced through German territory, the Hoss family had to separate. The father posed as a farmer, while his wife and children lived together in a former sugar factory in St. Michaelisdon, Germany. The plan was to wait until they could all emigrate together to Argentina, but the Allies prevented it. Faced with the threat of having to hand over her children to the Soviets, the mother chose to report her husband's whereabouts. Hoss was sentenced in Nuremberg and never regretted his actions. As if by an irony of fate, he was executed near the detention camp he had run months earlier. Years passed, and Brigitte moved to Spain to leave the past behind in her life. Her presence paved the way for her in the fashion world, even dazzling the famous designer Cristobal Balenciaga. Later, she met an American engineer whom she married. She accompanied him in his itinerant work around the world. This was her life until she contracted cancer at the age of 80. There, she decided to tell her truth on camera as she wanted to defend her father. A reporter, a relative of Holocaust survivors, prevented her from doing so and forced her to admit her father's guilt. Finally, it's time to remember Adolf Eichmann. He was known as the architect of the Holocaust for his role in implementing the final solution. Millions of lives were taken in his name. At the end of World War II, Eichmann was able to escape to Argentina. He settled there for many years, living a quiet life with his 4 sons, Klaus, Horst, Dieter, and Ricardo. However, they were unaware that their father was being monitored by the Israeli intelligence service, the Mossad.
El equipo había logrado su objetivo. Habían encontrado el nuevo domicilio de Adolf Eichmann. Y ese sería el puntapié inicial para la Operación Garibaldi, que fue la operación del Mossad que tuvo por objetivo secuestrar a Eichmann para llevarlo a juicio en Israel.
On May 20th, 1960, Mossad agents took Adolf Eichmann captive to bring him before a court in Jerusalem. The architect's 2 eldest sons, Klaus and Horst, founded the Argentine National Socialist Front. Their goal was to repatriate their father. The neo-Nazi group carried out robberies and an attack on a synagogue, but that didn't prevent Eichmann from being sentenced to death, which was carried out on June 1st, 1962. Now, after reviewing the tragic consequences the Nazi leaders' actions had on the lives of their children, it's time to say goodbye. Thank you very much for following us until the end. We look forward to seeing you again in our next video.